Welcome back to another episode of Worldie Unboxed. Today we are joined by David Abadin, the founder of DisCo, a food and beverage distributor, putting the incumbents on notice with a tech-forward approach to the grocery supply chain. We discuss how DisCo is shaking things up, what David envisions for DisCo, and how our journey at Worldie is not so different than David's. As always, follow our journey at worldiebrand.com and check out our YouTube channel and Instagram page for more content and updates. All right, let's talk to David.
Brandon, nice to meet you.
Hey, nice to meet you as well, David.
Yeah.
I checked out like the in sort of preparation for this conversation, even though I didn't want to prepare too much because we want to try to keep it as candid as possible. I checked out the produce podcast that you were on. I don't know when it was, but I creeped on your page and I just like found
Appreciate it.
that episode.
Yeah, we recorded that like a month ago.
Oh, okay.
But I guess I don't know why, but he released it like a month ago and then it went live on Friday. So I thought I had to be live on it. He's like, no, it's the same recording. So who knows? But he's a great guy.
Yeah, no. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was and informative as well because it allowed me to think about frozen food or frozen vegetables specifically a little differently. So, no, I thought it was a cool episode.
Yeah. So he's primarily like a fresh produce guy, but I went on a hike with him in the Dominican Republic because the guy that's our mutual connection started going in like the 80s and has since sort of built this community that goes down primarily to the Dominican Republic and builds water projects. So you can do two types of trips. You go and you build a project, or they have this trip called the Pico Trek. So you climb it's a walk, but it was hard, the highest peak in the Caribbean called Pico Duarte. And you take a picture on the top and it takes 3 days and it's, you don't take a shower, you're wipey bathing but it was awesome, spectacular. And then you're on the top of a mountain in the Caribbean and it's freezing cold. And it's bizarre that you're, somewhere where it's tropical and hot. And then you're at the top of this mountain. It's like 45 degrees and windy and cloudy. And it feels like you're in the Rockies or something. It was awesome.
Wow. Yeah, that is crazy. I've gone to the DR a couple of times. My wife, she was in a Peace Corps down in
Nice.
Yeah, for I don't know. I think this is prior to us meeting, but she was down there for like 3 years, and then we went back to go see her host family and hang out in Samaná and do some kind of like some help around the community. And it was, this off the grid type of resort where there's like no electricity, there's like nothing. And you go out there and you stay in it's a treehouse community. So you stay.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, there's zip lines all around.
How cool.
Yeah, it was pretty dope.
That's awesome.
We stayed out there for, I think it was like maybe 2 weeks. Yeah, it was a good time.
I'm gonna check that out because that sounds like something I would love.
Yeah. That was probably like 5-6 years ago, maybe even longer than that. So that community is like they built it up even more. That treehouse like resort community. Just checking out like their website and stuff. That they've done a whole lot with it. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it as like a cool little kind of like off the grid type getaway.
Yeah, I'd love that. I need that every once in a while. Dominican Treehouse Village. I'm looking it up. You might have been right by where I was.
Maybe so. Yeah, we're
no, it's a little different. Yeah, it's on the other side of the country.
We did get on the cliff. It was not 45 degrees and windy, but we did some like jumping off this cliff into the water. It was like a 40-foot jump or something. It was pretty crazy. Like it took a while to like get up enough courage to go out and make that type of jump. But like, yeah, we did some jumps off the cliff into the ocean.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll do some more research after. That's sweet. The little picture, I don't know if you guys have the whatever you call it, like the sidebar on your screen. Like I see me, Brandon, and Aaron.
Yep.
Like my little picture was the back of this sweater, which I got from like an NFT thing, 2020 maybe, like during COVID. So it's kind of embarrassing because I was like messing around with stupid NFTs, believing that was like the future of commerce.
Yeah.
I made money on it though. That whole phase was very bizarre.
It's pretty
of the internet money.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy. And I don't know, at least for me, I kind of never know if something is just a fad or if it really is the future. So like with AI, a lot of people are like, "Oh, this is the future. Using AI in this way is the future. Using AI in this way is the future." But you'd never really know, like, is it actually the future or just is it just new and people are excited about it and 5 years from now we're just not going to use it at all? I mean, AI
Yeah.
we will use it, but some applications it's like I don't really know if we're going to be using it like that in 5 to 10 years.
I mean, we'll see. I use it almost every day. It's basically replaced Google for me and everything. And what kind of plant is this? To help me pick an ERP based on these requirements of what we have to do. And certainly is like what we're trying to do with DisCo, the amount of like idea vetting and sort of brainstorming that you can do is kind of where I see, at least in my use case, like the most juice for my squeeze. Some of the like service providers that I'm using, some of the stuff couldn't be done like 2 or 3 years ago in terms of like, and I don't want to say tech illiterate, but there's people that I don't code or know how to do any of that stuff, but a lot of what they can do and sort of the pace at which they can do it has significantly increased. Like when we have my ERP has to end up talking to warehouses. So like at my old job, you'd literally have to log on to their website, which is probably run on some archaic, platform or whatever, download a report, manually enter the data into your system, which is ripe for like fat fingers and data inaccuracy and stuff like that. But with document processing and like the ability for these computers to talk to each other now, it's going to allow us to like rapidly scale, which is super cool. So that's how they're using it. I use it for nothing more than like a supercharged Google is how I feel like it works. And I tried Replit to build something, but like I wanted to make a basically like an app that's a companion for seniors because I have a dog named Max, so I was gonna call it Hey Max, and the you could talk to it. So if you're like imagine like an Amazon Alexa, but for somebody who's older, like hey, remind me to take my pills or call my doctor, or like you could just shoot the shit with this robot while you live in a retirement home or something like that, or the kids are moved out, or help me with this recipe. So I plugged that into Replit, which is like the app builder.
Yeah.
But I mean, 1% into the code, I'm like, I don't know how any of this, I don't know what this means. I don't know how this works. I have zero know-how of how to build things on a computer, further than Excel spreadsheets. So everything else is kind of foreign to me.
Yeah. I think that's exactly how I use it too. I was talking to Aaron about it the other day and saying that it's just been another, I call it like an assistant. So for
Yeah,
chat, that's kind of like what I use. Maybe that's like too mainstream now. People are using all these other things, but
yeah,
I'm a mainstream guy. So I built this like chat GPT assistant in chat GPT, like a worldie GPT is what I would call it. And
cool.
you like train it. I fed it a bunch of like information and then kind of use it the way that you kind of described, just bouncing ideas, brainstorming. I can get like not this is definitely not some kind of promo or commercial for Chat GPT, but like I use it to be that assistant that I could bounce ideas off of in the middle of the night. It's smart on worldly now, so it knows
Yep,
what we're trying to do. I give it a tone of voice for it to like speak or to
cool.
back to me out and even like how it should like view my comments. Like, should it be like, should it think of it like critically? Should it be like supportive? All blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Get it set up the way I kind of want it, and then I just used it to like be a supercharged version of Google.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's been very helpful in that sense. And as I envision it like growing and being a better platform for this type of like interaction, I think about it, especially for like startups or smaller businesses, like replacing like the contractors or uh,
Absolutely.
even like some employees, like being able to like replace that, and you're able to get further with a much leaner team. And so it's something that I wanted to kind of like dip my toe in a little bit so that I can be a better prompter because I think the prompter
Yeah.
is a much more powerful player going forward. So I don't think AI.
That's the name of the game. Is how, and I try to almost like, ask it how best can you help me arrive at where I'm trying to go. So like you ask me questions and then we'll go from there. The memory feature has been incredible. So I could say, hey, remember when we were talking about whatever, whatever 3 months ago? Well, I have this new idea that I want to replace some process that we were doing with a different view. What do you think? And I see on Twitter all these a lot of like you were talking about prompting.
Yep.
Say, okay, frame this with a very contemplative framework, for lack of a better term, and you can see it working through it. And I think it's not just like to me, it's like that supercharged Google thing. Yeah, it'll get you results and you can figure stuff out quickly. I always, like the other day, I forgot how the hell I got on the topic, but I was like, I like messing with it. So I was like, hey, if you didn't know language, like how would you try to communicate with me? And it started sending like, what would you call it? Like,
Pictures or something to you? Or?
yeah, but like in little bits of data. Like it didn't build a picture like with Dolly or Midjourney or something. It shot like a bunch of symbols out. And I was like, hey, what do you think this means? And then it asked me to do it back to it. It was like, that was kind of weird. And this was like ChatGPT like 3.5, and now we're on, I think, O1 or Pro or whatever that's apparently advancing. I don't know enough about like the technical side of what they're good at. So I just kind of use the normal one and hope it works.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating. It's super cool. That like parlay that into what we're doing with food. It's like a completely different side of business. Like food, it's super tangible. It has to grow in the ground or on an animal or on a tree. And the technology side is just instant. So particularly in like our space or my space, it seems like the industry is so old school. Like the company that I used to work for, when I was like, hey, we have terabytes of data, sales level data. We sold product 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and zip code A, B, C, D, E. Like, let's just dump it into the thing and see what it thinks. And granted, you need to add on all sorts of stuff about like demographics and to get at a cooler, clearer picture, but like it was kind of met with hesitancy. And I think that's why a lot of what we can do with the company that we're trying to build can just skip like a stage of evolution, because all the guys are still using, like I show a picture to a lot of the people that I'm talking to trying to, network and stuff. This app this company that I worked with builds a white label app or white label apps for food distributors. So the customers, whether it's like a chef at a restaurant or a buyer at a supermarket, can place an order like an Amazon kind of deal, and then it gets delivered. But they added a feature where you can take a picture of like a handwritten order and it'll upload it into their order thing. And it's literally Sharpie on the back of a cardboard box. That was somebody's order. And you're talking like US Foods and Cisco and all these guys are like multi-billion-dollar companies. And the orders or the transaction level is done literally on text message, voice note, WhatsApp, like pictures. It's insane. So there's just a huge opportunity to, at least with what we're doing, to not have to evolve an organization, but like build it from the start with these tools, because it's not that it's an older industry in terms of like the people who are working in it. There's very few butchers around. A lot of these guys, everybody was like that I worked with or still work with is like, hey, I've been doing this for 50 or 60 years. I've been at this company forever. And it's like, it's kind of it's a very slow moving, convoluted industry. So that's what we're going to try to build. Hopefully AI can help. And I'm sorry I'm rambling, but
No,
there's no booze in here, I promise. This is a mocktail.
it looks like that. I watch a lot of shorts now because we're trying to do a lot of posting and creating content on our social networks. And I see this it's not an alcohol beverage. It's a version of it. I think it's called Breeze or something. I want to say
Yeah.
yeah. And so like it looks that drink that you just held up looks like
Yeah.
a Breeze. I don't know what
Yeah.
gives you the buzz in a Breeze, but
I think it's
apparently
THC for one version, and then I think mushrooms, like lion's mane, for another version. Yeah.
that'll do it. That will definitely do
That
it.
will do it. Yeah, that'll do it.
But like I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I don't smoke weed, and I used to a ton, but like I'd be afraid that I'd be like high.
Yeah.
Frankly, like,
definitely happen.
Yeah. Like, oh, shit, now I got to do this. I got to be this for another 2 hours, So like there's a guy down here that I want to work with that has like a yerba mate drink, like a energy drink, yerba mate. And his now has THC in it, and it's like 10 milligrams or something. And I just think I would be too high to like, not that I'd be comatose on the floor having a panic attack, but like, I think, lion's mane, I get it, but like THC, at least for me, would be hard.
Do you ever give feedback to people that you're thinking about working with? Like, would you tell that guy like,
Absolutely.
hey, that's too much?
Absolutely.
And how
Absolutely.
are they receptive to it or no?
Sometimes, but I think I'm a bit of the outlier, at least on the weed side. Any one of the people that I know that like casually uses, it's like a drop in the bucket, doesn't affect them at all. They love it. So I definitely have to preface it with like, hey, I do not use THC products. I even tried the Delta 8 stuff and I was like, this is witchcraft because it's legal in Florida. And so is pot to some extent, I think too. But yeah, I mean the feedback portion is enormous for food. I was just at Expo West and there was a ton of like copycats, frankly. Everybody trying to do a protein infused anything. Everybody's making a soda. Everything's got electrolytes in it. Everything is seed oil free. And imitation for sure is the sincerest form of flattery, but I mean, this is true with anything, like with worldie, the real innovations are few and far between. And I think that's in any industry, but lots of like self-fulfilling prophecy people there for sure. Where, and the thing about retail with CPG, and this is what I, talk to a lot of the brands about, is that on a digital storefront, you have unlimited space theoretically. Like you could just scroll. At a store, there's finite real estate for products. So it's a much more difficult landscape to get into, one, support, two, and thrive, particularly in somewhere like soda where Coca-Cola has their stable of brands. They own that space they're called category captains. So they own that soda space. And the merchandising person or whoever's planning that inventory basically has to say, okay, has to tell Coke, we're going to bring these guys in, we're going to bring these guys in, because Coke spends so much money on advertising, so much money with promo. And they have such a big swath of the physical real estate at the stores that they can kind of command where things move. It's an absolutely crazy game, the retail side. And then you go to somewhere like Expo West where there's thousands of cool products, 99% of which the general population will never see in their supermarket. So a lot of it is like what we're trying to do is like democratize isn't the right word, but there's a shitload of cool products that people want. But the steps to get from somebody's cool product, like that Brez drink, down to filter all the way to a supermarket is very difficult with distribution, slotting fees, all sorts of noise. Because you're physically moving boxes around the world or around the country on a truck, and then somebody's got to open the box and merchandise the inventory. But I think there should be a way where you can trim the difficulty of, or the steps involved with getting a brand on the shelves. The end consumer, you and I at the supermarket, have a lot more say in what's on the shelves. And I think that has to be done, because it's very much like an illusion of choice at the supermarket, particularly with like, soda, cereals and stuff like that. There's very few of those are like independent companies that aren't these massive conglomerates of like Procter and Gamble and Kellanova and these huge companies. 5 out of the top 10 privately held companies, largest privately held companies in the country, are somehow related to food and beverage or booze. So like Cargill is a major manufacturer of everything: meat, additives, chemicals, everything. CNS is a huge distributor that also owns supermarkets. Publix is a supermarket, and they're not even national. They have a massive footprint in the Southeast, but it's still not even a national company. And it's a top 10 privately held company in the United States. There's enormous players that have established legacies. Like PFG is one of the biggest food service distributors. They've been alive for half of the life of the United States. Company was founded in like 1840 or something. These are huge companies that we're trying to go up against. And again, I'm rambling, but
No, I think
yeah,
and so I guess DisCo and the way in which you're doing it, and I kind of got a little bit from, the prior episode, you're doing it without any kind of like infrastructure. So is it like an Uber approach to where you don't have any trucks and
yeah.
so like How is that working? Are you working on an individualized level, similar to like what Uber's doing, where they contract the specific driver and they
It's like right above that. So because the biggest hurdle with food, and this is a very, very broad topic, but is food safety.
Mhm.
God forbid somebody gets sick or something, you need to not be liable, you need very detailed traceability of where things move around. So particularly when it's frozen or refrigerated. If something's shelf stable, like, a can of Coke,
Yep.
you could put that in a gig worker's car and sort of do it really quickly, akin to a GoPuff or DoorDash or Uber Eats. But with food, we're like one step ahead of that, where the smallest group of individuals we'll be interfacing with are people that have like a fleet of 10 or 15 vans that can move refrigerated product around. And those guys likely won't be gig drivers, because depending on the side of the truck or the size of the truck, you need what's called a CDL, like a commercial driver's license. But it is we're calling it asset light. I know I didn't coin that term, but the only thing we want to own is the inventory. So we'll buy the inventory, ideally, I don't want to say pre-sold, but with an understanding that the supermarket or the customer is interested in bringing it in. And then we have a network of service providers, some of whom are integrated in such that they can store the product and deliver it for us. But we don't own that. So they just charge us the fees. And so I don't have to have a warehouse managers or warehouse staff or anything like that. Everything's just outsourced. So very similar to an Airbnb, Verbo, Uber model, but with like warehouses and big trucks and fleets of trucks and container ships and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. And again, back to like that AI piece, the ability for my system to interface digitally with those service providers is like the key piece whenever we're vetting the service provider or like the SaaS that we're going to use, because it could be the best system in the world, but if it's not able to communicate with multiple other companies that we're using, it'd be ineffective for us. Like I want to have zero data entry, zero document processing done by people. Everything that can be, because it's not a hyper, we're not hedging markets or doing anything like that. We're just facilitating logistics. And not to say it's not like a highly intellectual operation, because thinking about where to put things and how much to buy and how to approach a go-to-market or how to promote a brand is very art as much as it is science. But we don't need the human capital that a hedge fund needs or a investment banking group or anything like that. It's not overly complicated to move stuff around. Knock on wood, because I know as soon as I say that, things are going to blow up. But yeah,
How many people do you have right now? Is it just you, or do you have anyone else in the business?
I have a silent co-founder. So he has two little babies. So he can't, like, I haven't made money in a long time, since about this time last year. And granted, we saved up. My wife, thankfully, is fantastic and has a kick-ass job that she does well at. Have we sacrificed a ton? Sure. I'm not eating ramen noodles every night, but the lifestyle change hasn't been crazy, but it's definitely there. So that's my investment in the business. And, when we're ready to start to bring in some money, like revenue wise and profit wise, he'll probably make the jump. But he's absolutely supporting as much as he can while still having his other job. So, and he's much more of like the sales guy that is connected in the grocery industry, where I am much more plugged in and versed on the sourcing and logistics side of the business. But since I've spent so much time now basically by myself, I'm doing everything. And the cool part is it's doable. The more time I've spent by myself doing all this and playing with ChatGPT and really learning how different things work, it's really cemented the belief for me that we can keep our organization extremely lean from a human capital standpoint and still be able to scale quickly and effectively. And it's absolutely, like I've never been somebody that, even at my old job, it was like I'm constantly tinkering and like, how do we look at this different, or what are we doing different, or how do we do it differently? I ended up training people how to use business intelligence, and I ran classes for new employees to use our ERP at my old company. I spearheaded the project with the e-commerce stuff. So I've always kind of been aware of many hats, very much a jack of all trades and a master of none. So it definitely fits what I'm doing here, which has been a lot of fun. And I think there's particularly on like LinkedIn and Twitter and stuff, there's like a romanticization of, I don't even know if that's a word, but of like super grind. Am I staying up till 4 o'clock in the morning every night building stuff? No. Am I stressed? Not really. The very real understanding of I have to do all of this by myself to make money and make this work is it's very real, but I don't feel like stressed or under the gun or anything like that. And whether or not that is good, I guess is yet to be seen, because there's definitely like a work ethic that comes with quote unquote like starving. So, but I think a huge for me is like work-life balance. So if we can build, or if I can do this without crashing and burning from a mental health standpoint, why not? And I don't want, this isn't a go build a company, sell it or IPO it or roll it up to a VC firm or whatever. Like, I think there's a very real possibility for us to elevate because we have ideally we're a lower cost option, or we can be a lower cost option, instead of raising the top bar of consumption. Like, not everybody can shop at Sprouts or Whole Foods or Erewhon or whatever. But what we want to cultivate is like the staples are healthier for everybody. So pushing the bottom bar up. And that's not something that I'm really like, I'm not really keen on like building something and just exiting, which I feel like, talking back to Expo West, a lot of people, not that it's like get rich quick, but people see these exits and they're like, that's what we can do. I don't think that's like at least from my perspective, like a healthy North Star in terms of building something that lasts and does good work. That's what we're trying to do. Like some of the companies that we're working with, one guy, his company provides microfinancing to his farmers in Honduras and Nicaragua. Like that's cool shit. Because the bank won't give these guys loans. So he takes out a huge loan, loans it to the farmers. They pay him back and they sell their yield or their crop directly to him. So it's like a huge win-win. That to me is exactly how capitalism should work. And the tagline of the company is everybody eats. So the idea is that the farmer does well, the manufacturer does well, the distributor does well, the supermarket can do well, and then the ultimate customer, you and me at the store, eats well. So I think it's definitely doable. I hope so.
Yeah, I like that tagline.
I need to trademark it before somebody steals it.
Yeah,
I probably can't trademark that, but
It'd probably be hard. Yeah, Brandon probably knows best though. He's the lawyer.
yeah.
yeah.
Both my parents are attorneys, so they always strike the fear of God in me with anything I do.
Always bring associated with whatever you kind of try to do. So
Yeah.
kind of poo-pooing things. But speaking of poo-pooing things, how has like the tariff, like this current administration, how's that like impacted sourcing? Has that like made things a bit more difficult on your end?
Yes and no, because there's no other options. We don't grow, California doesn't grow enough avocados for everybody to eat. We have to source it from Mexico. And look, the China stuff I understand.
Mm-hmm.
If you talk from in a geopolitical context, they're a technological and military adversary, but Canada and Mexico, it's like, I don't quite understand, at least from a agricultural standpoint, tariffing these products, because the price literally goes directly to the consumer. No part of the value chain absorbs any of those costs. Short term, a tiny bit, but there's a 10% tariff, the product just got 10% more expensive. And that goes right to our wallets. So from an agricultural standpoint, you need at least sourcing within the hemisphere, because we can kind of grow everything, the majority of what we eat in this hemisphere. There's some stuff that we get from Eastern Europe and Spain and stuff like that, but we can get along with Chile, Mexico, Peru, Guatemala for produce and seafood and stuff like that. again, you just can't get it anywhere else. You can only get Chilean sea bass from Chile. You
Yeah.
know, we don't grow mangoes in the United States commercially. We don't grow papaya or any tropical fruit. The chocolate can't be grown here. Coffee can't be grown here. So if you're from building cars, sure, I understand on a fundamental level the desire to bring jobs or manufacturing or whatever the administration wants to do. But from a manufacturing standpoint, it takes generations to build any sort of, or to change any sort of major manufacturing capacity, from literally like a capital side of building factories and roads and infrastructure and power and all that stuff, and then a workforce that's willing to participate in doing the work. So for us in the food space, there's nothing, you can't do anything about it. So a lot of the stuff, there has been a significant move away from Eastern Asia for sourcing, particularly into Central and South America, which is something we're hoping to capitalize on.
Yeah.
But there's no, you can't do anything about it. So unfortunately, the cost goes directly to people at the supermarkets and restaurants and all that stuff. There's no relief, or none of that cost is being offset at the intermediary level. Zero.
Yeah. So I think like food and like produce and anything like you kind of get at the grocery store, maybe even more than any other type of product, where price kind of dictates in the consumer's mind quality. So if we are trying to, and I don't know what the political, ideology is about putting tariffs on food coming in, but I assume it's to get Americans more prone to purchasing U.S. produced goods. And if that's the case, if the price or people see price as like an indication of quality, and they see like, oh, Mexican avocados from Mexico are, 50 cents more than ones that are coming out of California, they must be better than the ones coming
Yeah.
out. The same thing with like, fish. Like, okay, we got Chilean sea bass, it's $2 more than like, some fish that's local here.
Yeah.
And you start like thinking like, oh, these types of products are better. I think it plays against the idea of trying to sway the U.S. consumer to buy local or to buy
Yeah.
more brands that are local. If you start,
No, that's a great point. And I think that is absolutely part of the equation. I do think that, as things get more expensive, the likelihood that they are bought at the same velocity they were before decreases for sure. But yeah, people do. I mean, you see it at like Erewhon and stuff like that. People like to go buy expensive stuff. So yeah, it's insane. It's insane. And I've never been. I want to go. And they're doing a great job, really, at least vetting what they're putting on the shelves and stuff like that. So although everything is super expensive, it's not just facey like the products, and they really give a shit about ingredients and sourcing and things like that. So that's really good to see. What's heartbreaking is like some grocers, and we won't name names, but don't care. It's not that they don't care, but it's like, what's it cost? How soon can you deliver it? And I think that, regardless of your sort of political affiliations, the drive to have cleaner foods is a net positive for all of us, for sure. So hopefully that continues to trickle down into the ecosystem. And is it all going to go away? No. Should it all go away? Probably not. There absolutely needs to be a collective understanding that a lot of the stuff that we eat has nasty shit in it and doesn't have to have that in there. Like I'm still fighting off a cold. Like, why does my Mucinex have dye in it? Like, I don't care what color it is. Why? I don't get it.
Do you
Like
think
that.
most people are aware and care about that, or do you think it's more of like a niche thing? Because when you're talking about Expo West and like seed oils, putting protein in everything, those trends, they feel a little bit more niche. Like, do you think those are going to be like broader sentiments, or are they already broader sentiments? Like, what do you think about that?
I think they are. You listen to like the earnings calls and stuff of the big food manufacturers, and what they portray as the biggest threat to the industry is like the GLP-1s. So Ozempic, whatever that family of drugs really has these companies scared. And the diet that or the leanings from your doctor when you take these drugs are primarily like high protein, stay hydrated kind of deal. and not because you're less likely to snack. I think there is absolutely growing understanding of people at least caring about turning the bottle around and reading the label. But you go to Sprouts and it's like some of the stuff you look on the back and it's got all sorts of stuff you can't pronounce. And that's Sprouts. That's one of the best, most kick-ass leading supermarket in the country in terms of making sure that there's good stuff on the shelf. So some people don't care, but that's going to be anything. Some people are going to live to 1,000 and smoke cigarettes every day, and ultra marathon runners are going to drop dead from heart attacks. So I do think there is a lot of clickbaity stuff that just how saturated we are with news and getting in front of us. The average person or the average collective shifts much slower than what you'll see on the like Expo West and stuff like that, where like everybody needs protein. It's like, yeah, well, the American diet isn't going to change overnight. The GLP-1 stuff for sure is changing basket size quickly, and they're seeing that in their sales data. So I don't think, why would, I don't know if the deal went through, but Kellogg's bought, or whatever the conglomerate was. These guys are, tens of billions of dollars transactions. They're not sinking their money into that stuff if they think that that's wavering or faltering or anything like that. Americans love snacking. The world loves snacking on American brands. So I don't see like monumental shifts away from core stuff over the course of time, for sure, but not anything short term where it's like I don't think seed oils are going to get banned. It's too sweeping of a you can't change stuff that quickly overnight. It's not good for anybody. God, I'm rambling like crazy.
No,
That's what
anytime I go into the grocery store, when I go down certain aisles, I'm kind of like, I can't believe that this is still sold. Like, I can't believe it's legal to sell this stuff, and I can't believe people still buy it and give it to their kids or whatever. So I think you're right that in the short term, people are going to continue to do what they're doing, but maybe in the longer term, they'll start eating a little bit more healthy, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. Because who ends up paying for it is you and I that pay taxes, because the healthcare industry is like, we pay for all of that. So, do we have free healthcare? No, but we pay a shitload of money out of our taxes that goes to funding the, insurance and stuff like that for our issues. So I think as a country, we have we should be really pushing towards eating healthier. But again, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Mars, Hershey's, these massive companies with multi-billion-dollar ad campaigns, they wouldn't be advertising if it didn't work. So people still eat that stuff, and they just buy up the little brands that are competing and roll them into the portfolio and see you later. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do at DisCo is like, regardless of the retailer, and this is a little bit of a tangent, the distributors should play a role in trimming their offerings to, look at each category holistically and say, are we moving the stuff that we think is the best that we can put on this shelf? Not the stuff that's going to maximize the dollar. I think there's a capacity to maximize the dollar while have a cool, good for you product. And the better for you thing feels like it changes weekly in terms of, fat is good, fat is bad, sugar's good, not refined sugar is not bad. So there's always these fads, but from a general viewpoint, there is a huge opportunity to get Americans to eat better. And it needs to happen.
Curious to you mentioned earlier that you envision storefronts, and this is probably with the use of AI, where even in a fixed space like a physical grocery store, consumers are able to make kind of real time like changes on the shelves. Like, okay,
Yeah.
this, and so I mean, obviously it's not instant, but like there's a relatively quick change when it comes to like the inventory that's on the shelf. How do you envision like DisCo being best suited to like be that distributor, to be that 3PL for the
Great question.
environment?
So a couple of the brands that we're working with basically pulled out of selling to or into the grocery ecosystem because the distribution is so hard to manage. The distributors, the large national retail distributors for CPG products are basically universally disliked. I mean, I've heard horror story after horror story of, hey, yeah, we got in to Sprouts, but then after 3 months, we got a $60,000 bill and we've only sold them $40,000 worth of product. Or we sold them $70,000 worth of product, we got a $60,000 bill because their entire model is fee based. So to store a product, it's a fee. To promote a product, it's a fee. Fee. And they're super opaque in terms of what happens behind the curtain. Some of them make you pay to see your own sales data. So if you sell into this distributor, you have to pay them money for them to show you where your product is going. So back to how we're going to change the storefront. These brands that have done direct to consumer, you have address level data of your customers. So you can walk into a grocery store and say, or you can walk into a buying meeting and say, hey, you guys don't have this on your shelves, but there's 5,000 customers buying this product in South Florida, for example. They're buying it online. They'll buy it in the store too. You can't get everything online, so you should sell it in the store. So leveraging that direct consumer data is huge. Then there's another couple of companies that have like strangleholds on their little carve out of what grocery does. So there's a couple companies that they buy the sales data from supermarkets. So you can go when you have your meeting with Walmart or whatever, you basically have to buy a super expensive report that shows your product's positioning volume against your subcategory of products. Like how are we doing in soda? How are we doing in salty and sweet snacks? These are like multi-$1,000 reports. So for a small brand, it's impossible. And it's not impossible, it's very expensive. But it's only retroactive data. It's only what they did sell. So you're telling less than half the story. There's a company that I'm dying to work with. I just can't afford them yet. It's called Placer, and they buy anonymized cell phone location data. At least it's anonymized to the identity of the person, like whatever, David Abadin. But they have crazy demographic data about who these people are, where they're going, or where they're coming from and where they're going. So I was doing this demo with them and there's a Publix right next to my apartment. And I was like, I want to see, head of household household income is over 100 grand. They have between 1 and 3 kids. At least one of the parents is of Latin origin. And that was like 5 markers and they have hundreds. So you can go into a store and I'll sort of tie this in, but you can go into and sit with a buyer and say, your retroactive sales data isn't showing you what you could be selling. It only shows you what you did sell. So you can say, hey, did you know that your 3 stores in South Florida, the target or you're skewing 5% more than normal on Caribbean customers or customers with a Caribbean origin. You should expand that section of your retailer. Or, some of these retailers are like, well, we're a Main Street store, but hey, I was just in your store and the person that showed me where I could find my product, I had to ask them in Spanish. And they told me in Spanish. And the Hispanic foods are behind the door that says Asian food on it. National retailer was doing this. And like I went to visit some stores in Texas and everybody in the store was speaking Spanish. So I was like, do you guys have a Latin section with Latino products? Because that's one of the things that we're doing and what we're good at. And he takes me and it literally just says like Mexican food. And it was this tiny little thing, but everybody in the supermarket was speaking Spanish. So how we're going to do that is one, direct to consumer data, because you have, again, like, hey, these people are shopping at your stores. They want that product will move on your shelves. And then you layer that on top of this Placer data where you can paint the picture of this is what your consumer is. And are you making assumptions on what people are going to buy? Sure. But if you're selling hot dogs, you got to sell buns too. I mean, if you're not looking at that, then you only see that your hot dog sales. You don't know that you'd be selling buns unless you start to sell buns. And because the space is so finite, they're very hesitant to bring new products in. So doing this, painting the picture with data is like what I think is going to really allow us to get into doors quicker and show that our methods of evaluation for brands and products and things like that work. So that is how I think you can more quickly adapt what's on the shelf to what the consumer preferences are at that store. When normally, I mean, I'm not even kidding, it's a 18-month process to get a product on the shelf. If everything goes perfect, 18 months. Because you got to talk to a buyer and then sourcing, and they have to, look at the factory and check your data and do samples and all sorts of stuff. Merchandising, well, how are we going to planogram it? How are you going to promo it? Does the case size work? Does the artwork work? So it's constantly like retroactive catching up to trends with particularly main street grocers, the Walmarts, the Publix, and all this stuff. There's like Publix doesn't even want new items. They won't bring something in, and I don't know if this policy has changed, but they won't bring something in that doesn't sell anywhere else. They won't be a first mover for anything because they basically want to know what sells somewhere else, and then hey, we'll sell it too. So even some of the grocers are like, we're not even going to participate in innovation. It's crazy.
That is
Not that they're not participating in innovation, but like the pace at which they are willing to participate is significantly slow.
yeah.
Yeah, it takes a long time to get a product from like your first initial meeting, like Expo West, unless they have a super need for it. Those products won't be on the shelves until Q3 2026. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, I mean,
by that time, a whole nother Expo West has gone by.
yeah, it sounds like an uphill battle for any smaller brand that's trying to break into an industry, especially if they're attached to some trend. Whereas these larger conglomerates, these larger companies are able to, I'm sure they have ways to grease the wheel, so it's not going to take them 18 months for their product.
Of course.
To shelf. So
Of
yeah,
course.
it seems like a very difficult task for smaller brands to try to kind of over.
Absolutely. And then you're a small brand pinching pennies, and the distribution ecosystem is not set up to facilitate your success. It's just the fact of the matter. It's crazy. But these guys have the scale, the logistical scale, the breadth of portfolio that it doesn't really matter to them. They pick the winners from like a war of attrition standpoint. If you can survive and pay your way through or make just enough money to survive and get to critical mass at retail, then you do great. But the vast majority, I feel like, fail because it's so difficult to have healthy penetration at scale nationally with retailers. And with food, and it's like with the shoes too, you guys do it. You got to do a minimum run or else your COGS is through the roof. So you have to bet on yourself and put the cart before the horse and say, okay, we're going to order 100,000 units, because if not, my shoe is going to be $300 a pair. And that's not what we want to do. Aaron and I had a really good conversation about, price points and what people see from a value standpoint at different prices. And I think I saw another, shoe thing about price elasticity with shoes. And somebody like Shaq came in and made the $25 shoe, and I think an ex-NBA guy is making a $15 shoe.
Yeah, Stephon Marbury, I believe.
Yeah, Stephon Marbury. So these small brands, have to buy packaging, have to buy time at a manufacturing facility, because the majority of them are co-manufactured. You can't do it yourself. It's like the same with the shoes. You guys aren't making the shoes in-house. A factory is making them. Very few of these cool brands are actually manufactured by the brand. They start in somebody's kitchen or, at a restaurant or whatever, but they very quickly, if you scale, you very quickly go to co-manufacturing. So back to like the Uber model of how this works, like that's happening even at the manufacturing level, where manufacturing is being outsourced. Is that something new? Not really, but you can diversify a lot of your spend and risk doing that with not having to be so heavily invested in your own hard asset. It's very similar. The shoes and food. It is.
Sure.
It is. It's got to get on a container and go halfway across the world. Some of these places come like, I don't know.
Would you ever make a product yourself or no, based on what you know?
I would love to. I would love to. Like Miami-Dade County is the only place in the continental United States that you can grow cacao. And I saw cacao in the DR and I was like, this is the coolest shit. Like
Yeah.
it's a pod on a tree and it's beautiful. It's like bright red and gnarled and you're in the jungle and they cut these beans open and the like pulp that surrounds the cocoa beans is really good. I don't know why somebody hasn't made a product out of that. It's like a lychee kind of, it's like gooey, but it's really good. It's really tasty. It's a little bitter, but it's sweet too. It's like sweet and sour. But the chocolate is super cool. It's the most expensive it's ever been from a price per kilogram standpoint for raw material. But how cool would it be to grow chocolate in Florida and have like the United States or a made in USA super high end chocolate bar? Like that would be kick ass. But that would be smaller scale farming. I've always wondered, like, if I hit the lotto, I would just go buy a farm and grow stuff. I love bonsai trees and making my own hot sauce and growing peppers and stuff like that. Granted, Florida's a great place to do that because we can grow almost anything.
Yeah.
But I want to make my own brands or my own brand of a family of like Latin products for sort of the 21st century. But all of that will be co-manufactured, all of it. I mean, unless we got to a scale where it's the number one brand in the world or the number one brand in the country, then you can do some of it in-house. But I mean, Coca-Cola doesn't bottle their own products. They have regional bottlers and they don't make anything in Atlanta. So it's definitely a model that works from a cost perspective.
That's pretty cool. I didn't realize that you wanted to be a farmer. If you hit the lottery, that you'd become a farmer, but that's pretty cool.
A mezcalero in Mexico, make mezcal.
That would be cool.
That's what I want to do. Or have a cool farm in like, South Florida that grows all sorts of tropicals and makes, I like being outside a lot. So growing things is super rewarding.
Yeah.
Like I have it drives me nuts. You drive down the highway in Miami, there's like a, tree growing out of the side of the highway that's covered in motor oil and debris. And then I give all my tender love, to a tiny little tree and they don't like me. So it's so hard and it's so slow that it's like a very good reminder that instant gratification isn't everything. Like I made my own hot sauce with a pepper that I grew from a seed. That's cool to me. So I like doing shit like that. And it's called a Bahamian goat pepper. It's like a cousin of the habanero. It's hot.
I love hot.
It's delicious. Yeah. It's delicious. Delicious. Yeah. Food is and I mean, I put a post on LinkedIn, like every single brand that I talk to needs a different avenue to get to retailers. And even the innovative players, the Whole Foods and the Sprouts of the world are basically reliant on these companies that people don't like to work with on the brand side. So they do all these innovation things and it's all good. And, we're leading the charge against processed foods and hooray. And then it's like, well, you have to use these companies to get your product to us because they don't have the ability to self-distribute, whatever the case may be. So it always kind of sat weirdly with me that the way I look at it is like farm to table. There's super cool innovation at the farm, regenerative agriculture. I went to a tea festival after Expo West that the guy has the first regenerative organic certified green tea in the world. It's fantastic. We saw pictures of the farm in Korea and so a tea bush it's a tree, but they generally cut them shorter so the people that pick the leaves they don't have to reach up. So this guy lets the trees grow. There's deer everywhere. There's geese. It's super cool. So he's busting his ass to make a cool product at the farm. And then when you're looking at like the table side of it, so like the retailer, it's like, yeah, we're, recyclable packaging, or we don't want we're shifting away from plastic or lowering our carbon footprint or whatever. And then the two in farm to table is like nobody thinks about it and it's super broken. So sometimes I walk around these shows like, why am I the only one talking about distribution? There's a couple of other companies that are similar to what we're doing. Our model is a little bit different and in my opinion, like simplified, which is a good thing, but it's like the 600-pound gorilla that everybody's afraid to talk about. In fact, people have spoken out against the difficulties of the distributors and basically been like blacklisted. And they're like, yeah, we're not going to carry your product. Oh, and that PO that we sent, it's now canceled. Like recently it's happened. Like that's insane. And so you look from I'm no Steve Jobs, but it's like massive industry with a shitload of participants and the net promoter score is 0. there isn't even a net promoter score for food distributors. And then going around and talking to people, it's a universally disliked experience. And it just doesn't need to be that way, particularly with what we're doing where we can scale so quickly and provide good service. And again, everybody eats. It's not that it's recession proof, but you can't get fed by ChatGPT.
Not yet.
So
Not yet.
not yet. You both said that. You both said that simultaneously. Yeah, we'll
But
be eating goop in no time.
yeah, for sure. Like the Matrix goop that they had in the original ones. It's funny that you mentioned that, like, kind of like almost like mobster type of mentality up at the top. When you have very small amount of like people who are actually running the industry, the incumbents who are actually running the industry, and how they can kind of blacklist you. And there's all these kind of things that like happen that seem to like the casual observer like, oh wow, that's a bit nefarious for like the food industry. Like I didn't think that down there. And we kind of ran into the same thing in the footwear industry. We're like, oh man, this is like kids footwear, like it's hunky dory, unicorns and rainbows and stuff like that.
Yeah, everybody's happy to be here, and woo.
No,
Not at all.
watch what you say, watch what you do, like because people
It's
are
crazy.
shut down, you get blacklisted. Like, whoa, is that really the case? This is kids footwear. Like, no, this could happen to you. Oh, it's a bit eye opening, and maybe I'm not as surprised now that I hear it from you with the food industry or the distribution and whatnot. So like, yeah, it's kind of crazy that when you have a very small minority group of entities or people running an industry, like how mob like it actually becomes.
And the way I describe the problem, or one of the ways I describe the problem, and it's not the problem, it's just a symptom of the issue. There's however many hundreds of millions of Americans, 300, I forgot what we're at now, 360 or whatever. 80% of the supermarkets, between 70 and 80% of the supermarkets in the country are like large retailers, Walmart's, Kroger's, Publix, the big chain stores. The people, so shitload of people, minimal options from a grocer standpoint, and then the people that make the decisions at the grocers that control more or less what all of us buy at the grocery store is a group of like maybe collectively a couple of thousand people. So like the frozen buyer, the frozen vegetable buyer at Walmart controls every bag of frozen vegetables sold in every Walmart in the country. It's like an insane amount of reach and like not consequences, but they're what that person does and brings into the store feeds millions of people. It's crazy. So the industry is so consolidated with very few power brokers that it's super scary. But what we're trying to do, back to your great question about how do we reflect on the grocery store shelf what the consumer preferences are locally? What we're doing is very much leveraging the sales ethos of the brands. I don't want to sell anything. Will I help promote our brands? Absolutely. I want to be a subject matter expert in everybody that we're selling. I really want to give a shit about their products, and I want people to eat them and love them and feed them to their families. But I don't want to be the person knocking on the door and saying, here's our portfolio of goods. Nothing beats like this tea guy, Michael. He passed around a baby tea plant to the 50 people that were listening to us talk about regenerative agriculture. And it was like he was floating. He was so proud of what they're doing. And you can't replace that with a salesperson. You can't. So what we want is take Michael's great tea and make the two in farm to table so seamless that we can get his product via what we're building at DisCo down to the store level where people will buy it without all of the mess in between. It's a massively huge undertaking, but come to full circle with what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation with AI and stuff, the ability to make that happen from a technological and hard asset standpoint it's doable. So there shouldn't be a reason why it's not done. We just have these power brokers in the middle that slow everything down, and everybody takes their pound of flesh. And it's in the back of everybody's mind is what are the products at the supermarket that I'm looking at on the shelf? Like, how did this get here? Not even from a purely logistical standpoint, but how is this can of tuna in front of me right now? Who's the buyer that did this? Who's the guy that made the brand that is now selling to the that he had a broker and the friend knows the buyer and they went to get drinks at a show and the guy said great, or another brand screwed him over. So they picked this guy in and now they sell millions of units. It's like, and we all have tons of shit that we're constantly thinking about. So am I one of a few people who goes into a grocery store and looks at all the products and goes, oh my God, how did this get here? This is cool. This is from Turkey. This is from Serbia. This is from Russia, whatever. I'm in the business, so I get it, but it's a very like, for how tactile and ubiquitous these products are in our lives, very little thought goes into like, how the hell did this stuff get on the shelf? Or why is this shown to me versus something else? So ubiquitous, I don't know where I pulled that out of.
Kind of going back to,
You guys are going to delete this episode, I promise. We're going to rewatch this and you're like, this guy's just
and I want to hear
nonsense.
I want to hear your answer to this question.
Yeah.
Because you kind of like already set up the stage to where we're talking about a few players in the industry, a few big incumbents. We already know how they operate, and not all of it is like good, as we've described. And like, so you kind of have, you get to a certain level, and you've talked about winning the quote unquote lottery and going creating and building your own farm and kind of doing your own. You get to a certain level. DisCo gets to a certain level. There's an opportunity for it to be a lifestyle brand.
Yeah.
I mentioned you can kind of stick with it. You kind of do your own thing. You're not really messing with the incumbents too much, but you kind of carved out a little bit of the market for yourself. You get a strategic knocking on your door with like a check with more zeros than a freaking and you now have the decision, like, do I kind of sell out to this big strategic and go off and do what I've been envisioning? Like, this is what I want. I want to go off to a farm. I want to grow peppers and make hot sauce.
Yeah.
And try my hand at cacao trees or whatever. So like, what do you do in that situation?
Somebody asked me this week because she, like a lot of other people, has had poor experiences with distribution. And she was like, what if one of these guys comes in and gives you a massive number? And you definitely think about it. But first of all, nothing I say will prepare me for that day. There's no way to know how I would react.
Right.
It's what I've kind of been telling myself in terms of what I envision our strategy to be if we want to take on investors and stuff like that. The fit has to be there. So it depends. I mean, I really don't think what we're doing is something that is overly like laborious in terms of time for me or anybody that we hire or bring on. It's not like I've been a plastic surgeon cutting people open for 30 years and I want to go retire so somebody buys my practice. I don't see why, particularly if we get to the point where we are really making what people are eating better, why I would need to like offload it. And you can still own the business. I mean, if somebody was like, dude, I'll give you $100 million, I'd have to look in the mirror really hard, but maybe ask them for 150 and then shake their hand and walk away. But I don't know. It's a crazy question.
Yeah, it is. And kind of an unfair question, but I think you have.
No, I love it. I love the question. We have to ask each other hard questions because that shark is going to eat you alive in those conversations.
Absolutely.
And I'm a huge believer that like when you really know like what you're doing, nobody can outmaneuver you in a setting like that. If you really believe in what you're doing and you really know your shit and you're like obsessed with what you're doing, it's like clear eyes, full heart, can't lose. You're not going to get bullied over in one of those situations. That's the second time somebody's asked me that this week. So I'm hoping that's a sign of things to come.
Yeah. Speaking good things into the universe.
Yeah. I mean,
as an attorney, it depends is always an appropriate answer.
Dude, both of my parents are attorneys. My mother they're both trial civil defense attorneys. So my mom is, I think I'm definitely misspeaking here, but I think she's like one of the first or the first female president of the American Board of Trial Advocates.
Okay.
My dad was a hotshot and president of the Florida Bar and stuff. So I got a lot of it depends my entire life. And a lot of do as I say, not as I do. And, that's why we have insurance. Lawyers are a good group, and people think it's such a bad rap. It's nonsense.
Yeah, I agree. Absolute rubbish.
A good lawyer makes you feel like you're invincible.
You said we need what was that?
A good lawyer or good advice is it makes you feel like you're invincible. I sat down with a friend of my dad's who's an attorney who does like business planning and stuff. And he was asking me stuff that I didn't even think about. And I was like, dude, this is invaluable advice. And he's like, look, in 15 years, when Brendan, the exact question that I just got asked, if you don't have your ducks in a row, somebody's going to come and take the whole thing out from under you, because you didn't listen to the attorney 15 years ago. So it's an absolutely, you got to have attorneys always around. We need them.
I mean, you're only like to carry that on out into like an analogy. You're really only scared and worried like about a test or an exam or something like that when you're not prepared for it. And so like having good advice, having good preparation, it takes the fear out of it because you know what's coming, you know what to expect, you prepared for it. So yeah, I can buy that, even if it's a bit biased since I am an attorney.
Yeah. So we got 5 minutes, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we got
So I
5
know
minutes
like we
left.
usually have some like rapid fire questions. So I don't know if Aaron wants
Yeah,
to.
I
we
love
can.
rapid fire questions.
We'll do the rapid fire questions. Yeah. So, what would you say keeps you up at night about your business?
Scale. If you have like to move a truck from one warehouse to a customer costs $1,000, let's say. If you have one case on that truck, then that case bears the full brunt of the $1,000. If you have 1,000 cases on it, then it's $1 per unit. So that is where that's what keeps me up at night, is like making sure how to maximize scale or maximize our impact through the logistical network. That's what keeps me up for sure.
That makes sense. Scale is hard to get to, but super important.
Yeah.
So what would you say has been the hardest part so far about your entrepreneurial journey?
The hardest part has been getting in front of decision makers. It feels like a very high wall. The gate is very tall and very heavy to get into these conversations with people. They're extremely busy all the time. These buyers are super busy. They have 1,000 people pitching them at every corner, every time they're out and about, every show. They're super busy. These guys turn their badges around at the shows so people don't see that they're the buyer from Walmart or Amazon or Whole Foods or whatever. Because if not, they just get mobbed. So that getting in the door and then explaining to them what we're trying to do has been the hardest part of the journey.
And on the flip side, what would you say has been the most rewarding part?
So the highlight of my professional career was when they greenlit this e-com project at my old job. It was like I was obsessed with it. And I believed in the company, and they were very young, but they were kicking ass, and I loved their team. And I almost got laughed out of the building when I floated this idea of like, hey, we need to have some B2B e-commerce. And when we launched that and the first order came through and it got fulfilled, and it was like a 30% profit increase over average order, 7 new SKUs versus like very little organic adoption, double the volume. It was like I think I shed a single tear because I was just like, holy shit, this worked. So I texted the woman who was like my project manager on their side on Friday, like, hey, I think we're ready to turn DisCo on with you guys. And their software was what really pushed me over the can we build this hump where they will be my quote unquote Salesforce or my transactional entity. So me approaching them like, hey, I think we're ready to turn you on is like, that was cool because I'm building the business around that. So that's been fun.
And what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
That the business sales time was going to be a lot longer. One of the mistakes that I made, probably the biggest mistake, was I didn't thoroughly vet enough a piece of software that we're using, and it doesn't work for everything that we need to do. And I thought it did, but it didn't. So we've also been paying for it and not using it because I thought we were going to have business like last August, and things just haven't materialized yet. So I think I get very like anxious for things to start, and giving myself a little bit of like breathing room to understand that the cycle times are longer. That's definitely something that I wish I knew.
And what advice would you give to an aspiring entrepreneur or a first-time founder?
Aaron, you and I talked about this, and I've been thinking about it since. It's like, just keep moving. Like some days are really slow for me. And some days it's like, holy shit, I just got off the phone with somebody who could change my life tomorrow. So it's like lots of highs, and then periods of looking at yourself in the mirror and your bank account going in the opposite direction, going, what did I get myself into? So also exercise, don't get bogged down in trying to burn yourself out, because it's just not, it's not sustainable. And definitely prioritizing or having the freedom of not like a 9 to 5 and staying regimented with exercising has really, I think, helped keep me even keeled. So healthy is you can't run a business or build cool shit if you're cloudy all the time. So I think that is huge.
Yeah. And then what would you say, what does success look like for you? Either in life, with this business, however you want to define that. What does success look like for you?
So my dad was, this is actually a crazy picture. I have this on my desk. This is a dredge boat that my dad worked on in the Mississippi River. So he was born in Cuba and they came here and had nothing. So he worked, that's the southwest pass of the Mississippi River. So, from that to him paying for me to go to Notre Dame, that is kind of like my benchmark. If my kids can get into at a school or do whatever they want to do, and I can make sure that they're healthy and supported, I think everything after that is great. So that to me is like what success looks like.
And then
There's no number, but that to me is that's the benchmark. That's where we want to be.
makes sense. And then where can people find you and DisCo?
Our website, thedisco.tech. Follow me on Twitter or X. I'm trying to be as active as I can on LinkedIn. David Abadin is my LinkedIn. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome.
Yeah, sweet, man. It was awesome chatting with you, dude. Learned a lot in this past hour and a half.
And I listened to the one of the guy with the
Oh, yeah. Corey.
Corey. And I did not have as good of a podcast as Corey.
No.
Corey is a sharp dude.
No, once this goes through editing and everything, it'll be right on par.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you,
No,
man.
thank
It's
you.
fun.
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah. Keep in touch, please.
Yeah,
Will
for
do.
sure.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys.
All right, man. Take
Have a
care.
good one.
You too.
See ya. Bye.